Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, third year customs branch, English section. We are continuing with the Egyptian taxation system. We are talking about income tax, and we reached the point of how to assess what we call the tax base, or the income tax base from the source of revenues of non-commercial professions. And of course, non-commercial professions mean net return includes the returns to non-commercial professions. Here, what we have, we talk about net return instead of gross income, like the case of wages and salaries. Net returns, it means we have to deduct from the gross returns all costs required for practicing the profession, such as fees of registration in trade union and practicing the profession, taxes related to professions except this tax. So if we have a dentist who are receiving, who is performing his what we call his work in his clinic, and he of course buying some goods from the local markets or from imported one, and of course he is paying customs, he is paying value-added tax. So in this case, this person actually, these taxes should be deducted from the gross income because it is necessary to generate revenues. Money paid to the trade union for financing special pension funds also should be deducted as expenses. Health insurance and insurance against this, donation as mentioned before. What I mean by this, health insurance and insurance against this should be less than 10%, and also a donation shouldn't be greater than 10%. If the taxpayer doesn't have regular accounting books, then actually we will calculate his what we call expenses for business by 10% of the gross revenues. So if someone earning, say for example, 100,000 pounds, and he didn't submit acceptable records, books, accounting books, then actually the state or as the tax authority will reduce his gross income or with estimate his what we call expenses by 10%. And actually this to give incentives for people to have what we call acceptable accounting records, because 10% is so little. So this is actually what we call the tax base for the source of income that coming from revenues of non-commercial professions. Lastly, we have fee exemptions, of course. Some exemptions. Professionals who are registered as an active member in their professional unions have what we call exemption for the first 3 years. So any person who graduated from the university and working in his own, for his own business, not for others, he has the right to be exempted from paying the tax in the first 3 years of his business or his work, in condition that he should be registered in his active or his what we call professional union, so that he can enjoy this kind of exemption. Revenues authors from writing and translating books, and this actually to encourage people to be involved in scientific or literature, what we call authoring or writing books, whatever, and this is good for cultural purpose. Revenues of members of unions of artists from production or painting or making some kind of status or whatever, and also this for encouraging those people who are make our life beautiful in squares and other areas. Now we move to the last item of income, that is estimated or that is be included in what we call income which is real estate income. Real estate income, and actually the tax base here includes taxable revenue of real estate buildings that are, and there are two kinds of building, rented according to the civilian law, اللي هو معناه new rent يعني, that are determined by the basis of actual rental value, reduced by 50% for all costs and expenses. خلينا نقول مرة ثانية إنه the taxable revenues of real estate buildings that are rented according to the civilian law are determined on the basis of the actual rental value reduced by. يبقى أنا بتكلم على ده، وبتكلم على كمان على what we call furnished apartments. يبقى عندي two kinds of real estate اللي هو بنقول those who are rented according to the new law, and the second is that apartments that are furnished and then be rented. Those only the two items that here the tax base إنه deduct 50% for all costs, for all costs. يبقى taxable income from this source is 50% of the gross revenues. Now, the real estate tax that is paid according to the Qanun in 2000 shall be deducted from the income tax. If I own a building and I pay what we call real estate tax, this real estate tax will be deducted from the returns of the real estate in the income tax, and so that we can actually eliminate what we call double taxation. If I, for example, if I have a building or real estate and I pay, say, for example, £1,000 as real estate tax, but also because of the rented apartment that I am receiving money and I am paying also 1,000, in this mean I will pay my real estate tax and I will be deduct this 1,000 from my payment in income tax. This is by this we finished what we call the tax base. Then we move to the third step, which is tax assessment, أو بنسميها ربط الضريبي. Tax assessment is usually done through tax returns. What happened? People have to submit their own tax return, or some people will submit tax return for others. So wage and salary earners, the businessman or the government or whatever will submit their tax returns. But businessmen, non-commercial professional returns, and owners of real estates will rented apartments will have to submit their own tax return. The main source of what we call assessing the tax on the people is through tax return. الإقرارات الضريبية. If yearly income is greater than 8,000, that first step في tax assessment. The tax assessment is assessing what we call a tax base, and this step is done by tax authority. Then the second step is to what we call apply the structure of a tax rate. Tax rate structure is if the yearly income is greater than 8,000 per year, then the rate structure is progressive. Progressive means, as you know from the previous lecture, that we have what we call the tax rate is increasing when the tax base is become larger and larger. And so the picture like this: brackets, tax rate, tax credit. Tax credit is something new in the Egyptian tax structure that was existed in 2017. And the main reason for tax credit is to help or to increase the income of the poor people. The first slice is from £1 to £8,000, tax rate is 0, and tax credit is 0. So it is exempted from paying the tax. If someone has income that is, say, for example, 7,000 per year, he shouldn't worry about tax, and the tax rate on him, he is exempted, the tax rate is 0. Then from 8,001 to 30,000 pounds per year, the tax rate is 10%, but he will grant it 85% tax credit. After we estimate his tax liability, then we will deduct from it 85% because this means, as I told you, for helping those people in this category. For example, if someone, his income, say 30,000, it means the net income in this slice would be 22,000 multiplied by 10, 2,200. If you multiply it by this and deduct it from 2,200, the net tax liability will be 330 pounds only. Then the third slice, the fourth slice, and the fifth slice. And you will see that the tax credit is declining. And this, again, to assure you that this tax credit is mainly for the help of the poor people, especially poor people. And this is the case. But we have this is the 5 brackets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this is a special bracket. This is special brackets, which is 10% tax rate on gross income for those people who are working not for their main jobs. If I was, for example, working additional job I make some lessons in one of the other schools, then the other school will deduct from me 10% without having any expenses, 10% of the gross income. Now, tax collection, after we now estimated the tax liability, this is the end of the tax assessment. At the end, it means that deciding how much money you have to pay for your tax liability. Suppose I have to pay 5,000 pounds. Now, how I will pay it? Then this is what we call tax collection. Tax collection, it means how the money that deserves to the tax authority will be paid to the tax authority. And of course, for salaries and wages, we have a unique method of collecting that tax, which is withholding from source. Withholding from source, it means that the person, as a salary earner, will not have his gross income. I myself receive my net income after the tax was collected from my income, because the university will not pay to me my gross income, but it will pay to me what we call a net income. So it will withhold the tax on myself and on all other people working at the school, and they have to deliver it within the first 15 days of each month, of the following months. We are now in March, so the salary of March for all the people who receive salaries, for example, will be collected from by their employers, and will be delivered all this money to the tax authority within the 15 days, the first 15 days of April, for example. In the case of employers who are not residing in Egypt, then it is the responsibility of employee themselves to pay their own tax. Some people are working for some business which employers are staying or living in Saudi Arabia or whatever, but his work in Egypt, his business in Egypt. So in this we have joint responsibility of the employees. They have to pay their own taxes. Now, for non-salaries and wages incomes, like for example commercial and industrial profits, non-commercial and industrial professions returns, and real estate returns. In this case, we have more than one method, of course, to collect the tax. One, the tax liability is collected at submitting date. Those people, natural person, has to submit their tax returns by during that period, January, March, that ends in March 31 interval according to the following system. They have to submit their tax return, and when they are submitting their tax return, they have to settle their tax liability. One method is discounting system. Discounting system, revenues of commercial and industrial activities, anyone by law, this is a law, any one of the following institutions has to deduct from any amount of money greater than £300 paid to a natural person within 5% of the amount of payment determined by the Minister of Finance. An example, someone is importing wheat, flour to Ministry of Supply by £1 million. Then the Ministry of Supply shouldn't pay to these importers £1 million. Instead, they have to pay him less than 1 million by percentage determined by the Minister of Finance and whatever. If it is, for example, 2%, if the Ministry of Supply, after receiving the flour, which according to the qualities agreed upon, then they have to write to him a check or pay to him 90% of the amount of million, and the 2% will be paid directly to the tax authority under the name of this importer. And of course, being an importer, I will receive 90% of the value of my shipments. In addition, I will have a receipt from Ministry of Supply. That has what we call, they paid for me the other 2%, although I can own £20,000 under my name. At the end of the year, at the submitting date, 31 of March, at that time, I will take into consideration, I already paid for my tax liability, $20,000. Then we have, with respect to non-commercial revenues, agencies listed above are required by law to deduct or discount from any money greater than £100 to those professions 5% of this payment. If I am a physician and make some surgery in other hospitals, then it is the responsibility of this hospital's management to deduct from my money 5% and to be delivered directly to the tax authority under my account, and I will receive a receipt. When I submit my tax returns, I will take care that I already paid 5% of my payment, of my, the money, 5% to the, what we call tax authority. Then we have another method, advanced installments. الأقساط المقدمة, which mean that according to this system, taxpayers are required to, by law, and by law, the law will determine who will pay the advanced installment, to pay 60% of his last year tax liability or his estimated income on 3 equal installments at the end of June, September, and December every year. Now he paid on advance. At the end of the, at the submitting date, he will settle his tax affairs. If this 60% greater than or equal to, or greater than the amount he should pay, he will receive back his money, or if this money is 60% less than his actual payment of tax liability, he will complete what is left for him. A final settlement of tax liability will be carried out at the submitting tax return date. If the taxpayer was liable to losses for 2 consecutive years, he has the right, or he's changing the legal form of his business instead of partnership to limited liability or whatever, he has the right now to stop this method, the advanced installment, because it is, it will be difficult for a taxpayer who make losses and at the same time he pay in advance his tax liability. Collection on account, this is the last method of collecting the tax liability, collecting on account of the tax. agencies are required to collect money for the tax purpose. Like what? يعني في بعض what we call it agencies that should collect money for the tax purpose. These agencies are required by law to do this. يعني for example, agencies that grant permissions. Agencies الحقيقة number 2 ده يعني نحطه يمكن نحط number A. Agents that grants permission for wholesale business in vegetables, fruits, cereal, and the other foodstuffs. Material الرقم هنا 10% off. يبقى if I am a wholesaler and I have my place in what we call wholesale market في النزهة أو في whatever, then I have to rent this place from what we call governments. When they renew my rent or I am renting, the tax authority asks them to collect 10% more of the value of rent and should be delivered to the tax authority under the name of those wholesalers. Customs authority from their importers. Anyone import, they deduct from 0.5% of the import value under the name of this business. Slaughterhouses within 10% of the fees, traffic department within 10% of the fee, and I'm talking about taxis, trucks, and so on. When they renew their license for these cars, then they have the tax authority ask the traffic division to collect 10% more to be paid directly to the tax authority under the name of their business. For non-commercial profession, all courts and real estate agencies, also hospitals in which surgeons perform operations for their own benefit, have to collect an amount determined by the Minister of the Finance. Yani, lawyers who are working in courts, when they raise courts issues, then they have to pay fees. In addition, they have to pay some money under their name, so that at the end of the year they will settle this tax. In addition, customs office, whatever. The main feature of this tax, you should read it, and actually, let me have at the end of this lecture an exercise to try to solve it. عندي Mr. Ali is an accountant. He is married and has 3 children. His basic salary $2,500 per year. He received كذا as he paid $1,000 per month for his life insurance for the benefit of his wife and كذا. Last year income of his wife Sarah is كذا. And you are asked to calculate Ali liability, tax liability, and ATR within TR. Let me try to solve this. First, we have to make what we call yearly income. Yearly income of Ali, Ali. Yearly of income is equal to, this is monthly, يبقى 2500 per 2000. يبقى ده نقول عليه basic salary, basic هتساوي 2500 multiplied by 12 وده يديني 30,000 pound. بعد كده في عندي ال variable component, ال variable salary هيبقى I will add all these together اللي هو 1500 1000 2000 يبقى نقول عليها 1000 plus what we call it 2000 1500 plus 2000 and this is of course ادي 1500 و1000 وكده يبقى 3000 4500 يساوي 4500 multiplied item by 12 and بحسب for year and this will give me 0 0 و12 65 و12 في 4 48 54 يبقى ادي his income. His total salary I will add those together يبقى 48,000 1000. يبقى ده اللي هسميها ايه؟ الجروس سالري. الجروس بتاعته هتبقى 84,000 جنيه. Now we have to use what in this اللي هقول لكم عليه ده how to this is salary of course. يبقى I will have to apply this case. هرجع تاني للايه؟ للتاكس بيز بتاع السالري. ناخد الدقيقتين واخلص بس عشان خاطر ايه نبقى ايوه. يبقى the picture in your diagram I have to deduct our social insurance. يبقى the social insurance I will multiply 30 by 14% و I will multiply 50 by 11%. يبقى ده 14%. يبقى ده هيساوي ادي هنقول 0 0 0 0 و14 في 3 ب 42 4000. يبقى ده سوري 4200. يبقى ده اللي هو بالنسبه للجزء ده. بالنسبه للجزء الثاني اللي هو 11 في 54,000 يبقى 54,000. المفروض طبعا انتوا معاكم الآلة الحاسبة، انما احنا 54,000 واحد 54,000 كده في ادي هيبقى ادي 0 0 0 و 004 احسن على طول 54,000 في 11% يبقى 11 في 4 ب 44 و11 في 5 ب 55 59 يبقى 5,940 تقريبا. يبقى اذا كانت الحسابات بتاعتي مظبوطه ما اعرفش الآلة الحاسبة نقدر نستخدمها. يبقى ادي 11% يعني 11 54 و 54 54 و 54 و 54 يبقى دي 4 9 5 بالظبط 5,940 زائد الرقم ده يديني ادي 0 4 ادي 1 و4 و5 ادي 10 يبقى 10,140. يبقى النت انكم افتر السوشيال سكيورتي سكيورتي يبقى عندي بدل 84,000 اطرح منهم الرقم ده اللي هو 10,140 يديني النت انكم ادي 0 6 ادي 8 وادي 3 و70 73,860. يبقى انا عندي النت انكم بتاعي 73,860 الحسابات تكون مظبوطه. بعد كده اطبق بقى ايه البرايفت انشورنس. البرايفت انشورنس هو قايل لي في المساله انه عامل برايفت انشورنس. هضطر ارجع تاني ماشي. هو عامل what we call he paid 1,000 pounds per month for the life. يبقى هو عامل السوشيال انشورنس بتاعه 12,000 بالسنه. انا عايز اشوف بقى هل هياخد 12,000 ولا لا. يبقى لازم اضرب الرقم ده في 15%. لازم اضرب الرقم ده في 15%. 15% في 7 هيبقى اقل من الرقم ده. يعني خلينا نعملها سريعا. ادي نشيل بقى نشيل بعض الاجزاء من هنا كده. ماشي. اول استخدام للطريقه يبقى انا عندي 73% 73 1860 multiplied by 15%، يبقى دي زيرو وخمسة وستة وخمسة في المية 43 وخمسة ثلاثة 15 19 وخمسة وسبعة بخمسة 36 ادي واحد. هنا هحط ايه؟ هحط زيرو 6 8 3 7 واجمع ده يبقى زيرو زيرو 9 ادي 7 ادي زيرو ادي 10 ادي زيرو ادي زيرو ادي 11 يبقى 11,000 وكذا، وده رقم اكبر من ايه؟ اكبر من ال 10,000 اللي هو محدده بالقانون. يبقى اذا التاكس لايبيلتي بتاعتي، اسف، التاكس بيز يساوي 63,000 63 و160. بعد كده يعني هطبق المعادله، وانا ارجو ان انتم تطبقوها. واحنا عملنا واحده زي كده انتوا عملتوا واحده زي كده في الوقت. انا بقسم 63,000 ده الى 3 شرائح. ال 63,000 از تاكس بيز 860 بقسمه الى شرائح 8000، وبعدين بقسمه الى 22,000، وبعدين 15,000، وبعدين الباقي هيبقى عندي من 45 ل 63 يعني تقريبا 18,860. هذا كل ده في الرقم بتاعه اللي هو جاي من الجدول 0 10% 15% و20%، واجمع واجيب التاكس لايبيلتي، واقدر احسب زي ما انتم عرفتوا قبل كده ازاي نحسب الافريج تاكس ريت والمارجن تاكس ريت، وازاي نرسم الكلام ده، والحاجات دي مطلوبه منكم. بشكركم وانتظر منكم questions and good luck. Thank you.